All right. Welcome to another podcast. And this week's podcast, we're going to be talking about footwear with our special guest, John Long. John is the owner of Fleet Feet in Minneapolis, and he's got a background in running starting as a kid, leading him through college and being a captain of the University of Wisconsin National Championship cross country team. What year was that? 94, John?
I wasn't the captain of that team. I was on the team. I was captain the year, 2 years after. I was just a member of that team. Yeah.
Okay, so then progressing from his college running career into coaching, and then eventually being involved in running retail. So John's a great wealth of information from a number of different facets related to running, and we'll particularly be talking about shoes. But anything you'd like to add to the intro there, John, as far as your background?
I found running. I was a bike racer, raced BMX and broke my collarbone and dislocated my shoulder, and had to do something to stay in shape. So ended up getting pulled into cross country, and it kind of just took off from there. Fell in love with the sport. I did both sports for a couple years nationally, and then kind of just really fell in love with the running side of it. So saw some real opportunity there. Mountain biking wasn't a thing yet. That probably would have been where I would have gone if I was younger. That kind of came on later, but no, really just fell in love with running. Had a great experience, had great coaches. Was fortunate enough to compete in college. Loved that. Ran at Wisconsin. Was a member on the 88 team, and then captain the 2 years after that. So ran on the track, got to travel extensively with the sport, which was fun. Kind of figured out my feet are probably why I really started to fall in love with this. I have feet they're completely flat, which I can say have made it into a book for their flatness. I kind of had injuries. And I think it kind of led me to just the interest of early adopter of orthotics. Met a gentleman who was a podorthist at the time, Jack Pirtle, kind of early adopter. I got to meet Herschel Walker. He was he did his footwear for him because he had specially really flat feet. So kind of got tied into it that way, got into coaching, and kind of just followed my passion into the business side of it. So it's been a great experience.
I love it when there's people that kind of like accidentally discover running, and then it kind of becomes a big thing. Like every part of your life now, from your business to your health, and even a lot of success you had was because of running, right?
My wife, I sold her a really bad pair of shoes, and I based on color, and I knew she would come back, or I hoped she would, so it did work.
And there you go.
Not to disparage any companies, but it was a Saucony Grid Omni, the early version of it, and it did work. It brought it right back.
Awesome.
One time I've worked on that.
This is the pink one.
Yeah.
Hey, and we're going to cover plenty of stuff related to even that, what happens in the fitting room when it comes to shoes and everything. But in light of what's happening with the world pandemic and how pretty much every facet of our life has been affected by it, can you tell us a little bit, John, about what's happening that you're seeing on the retail side in terms of the effects of COVID and some of the things that you think will happen going beyond this?
Sure. Early on, when all this started, we could kind of see, we actually almost started to get a rush of people coming to the store, and the data coming out, this is late February into early March, we were seeing a rush to the stores. And I mean, I came into our store, and I don't remember the exact date, it was a Sunday, and that's when they were encouraging us to do some social distancing in the early phases. It was insanity. Our store it was the most unsafe place you could have ever walked in. We had too many people, and we literally just said, we need to stop this. So we went to appointments. So, an early adoption of using appointments, spreading people out. And that was probably our biggest trigger point of this is going to change, and it's kind of changing rapidly. That was before they asked us to wear masks, and they were giving some idea of distancing. Changed our fit process. We went from tying shoes on people to checking their feet to, we'll back up a little bit. I mean, this was just early. Kind of saw that evolve until we had to close. But with the advantage of that was it gave us an opportunity to see that the appointments worked. People really wanted to come in. I joke that running was up 8,000% for a while. Everyone in the world was out running or walking because it was the only thing they could do. So we did see a rush initially. Then it quieted down. Really gone to the internet, things like that.
Right. And so you initiated a lot of those changes before the state even mandated them, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. So we went to a protocol. We wrote a protocol for fitting. We did 30-minute appointments. We distanced the whole store out. We wrote up a plan that we submitted to the city because I was also doing a road race at the very beginning of this that got canceled. And we had met the stipulations there. So in talking with the city and the state, we were seeing things that they wanted to implement. So we really just started doing it ahead just to be safe. And to really control the store. And customers were great about it. People kind of followed. I think we're very fortunate that our customers really kind of get the whole thing where we're located. You run into a few people that will push back on it, especially this is before there were any real mandates. But people were happy about it and it worked well. I think for us it allowed better customization. So we were able to actually help people more one-on-one, and I think the customer experience probably improved over 25 people piling in the store and trying to fit people individually.
I think we were kind of good.
Were there technical issues with making the appointments, and we're like running over a little bit later, or people staying longer, or what do you do with the people that are just sit in their car? How did it work out for you?
The appointments, so we set up a 30-minute time slot, and we've used these before. So and I guess we could pivot real quickly. We do a lot of corporate work where we go on site at campuses. So we had used an appointment system beforehand. And so we had experience using that. And we really just took that format and slapped it into this, put it into the store. 30 minutes, we forecast ahead that this is a 30-minute fitting. We need to kind of cover some things. We do a survey when they make the appointment. So we get information before they come. So we print it off every day. Yeah, so we know a previous customer, like yesterday, I helped 3 people in a row that were answered yes, a previous customer. We can look up their customer history. Literally 2 of them wanted to try 2 different sizes on and out the door, just a quick fit. But then somebody new, which I think is really interesting for us, and I think we're seeing this across the brand. Our brand with Fleet Feet is that we are seeing new people come in the stores. So they're going to the websites, they're looking and seeing how we're doing things. And they're very open to the appointment system. I think as we move forward, though, customers we've had for a long time that have shopped with us for 20-some years, they might be a little more hesitant. They're just used to coming when they want. So we're learning this as we go along. I don't think it's definitely we're following the topography. We're not following the map. So as it's happening, we're going with it.
Hey, John, have you guys started using the Fit Station through Fleet Feet? Is that something that you guys implement for part of the fitting process with your clients?
We don't have the full Fit Station yet. We do have the Volumental, though. We're on the list.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. So we're using the Volumental. We're still using that during this time period. We're keeping socks on. We're cleaning the machine. So one of the big processes that really has changed for us is we're cleaning everything every time. So we've set up pods where people are being fit. Everything gets wiped down, everything gets sprayed, disinfected, all the way through the whole process. You stay with one fitter. We keep people in their specific little pod area, so they're not running through the whole store. And we have it broken up enough with footage that people really aren't crisscrossing.
That's great.
Right. Hey, and unless there's other questions related to COVID, maybe we can use the question about the Volumental to transition into how fitting has changed. I wanted to see, John, if you could cover how fitting shoes, how you were doing it in the 90s when you first got into retail, and how it's changed today, both including philosophies and technologies.
Sure. So my early experience in running, we would fit, but it was almost, it almost depended on the product at the time. If a shoe was really good, I'll just use the Nike Air Max Tri-X. Was one of the first Air products the Air Max shoes that actually probably was designed for running. Smaller Air pod in the heel, had decent flexibility, but that shoe was like gold. I mean, we really went to the shoe, not necessarily the fit. All the shoes doing really well, and you'd bring it out and fit. And that went on for a while. I mean, I think a lot of it was kind of product based as people put it on their feet. Then we started to understand a little more about, let's look and see if you have a flatter foot, we need more support. And I think a lot of what we learned in the industry, really, I think that cadence was set by our vendors. they would come in and say, this is a shoe for a flat foot. And we'd say, oh, that's a shoe for a flat foot. So then if we saw somebody with a flat foot, we'd put them in that shoe. So I think we were probably more funneling what was given to us on that end, instead of us specifically fitting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And that was my experience early on in the 90s too, was you had kind of your go-to shoes that you fit people, and what you thought about fitting was kind of dictated to you by the manufacturers.
Yeah, and then we everybody had their shoe. We had DS
Right.
Mark. Well, Mark only sold DS trainers, Asics. You knew if he was on, he was going to sell 20 pair. The favorites took over. But I think even at that time, I think quality in footwear and shoes that fit well and were comfortable did better. And I think that, to speak to how Asics really grew, this is in the 90s, is, hey, what, that Asics shoe really is comfortable. It's fitting a large amount of feet well, and people are having success. And I think the keystone even back then was, if someone got a shoe that fit well and it was comfortable and they could run in it with, less injury than another shoe, or they stayed healthier longer in a shoe, had a better experience, those are the brands that tended to come up, or the shoes that we would pick.
Right.
Versus, driving him into it. I think the product itself did start to drive it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You bring up a good point though, because I was wondering, as a consumer, does the fitter have a fitting bias? It's a shoe that they like, that they want to put the person in because they think it's a great shoe. But, or do you find that, like, nowadays, maybe you give them more of the opportunity to try different things and see how it goes?
Yeah.
I think to that point, Rob, yeah, I think in the past there was a bias. I mean, and I think some of it might have been driven by somebody liking a shoe. We didn't have as much quality selection either. So yeah, I love the Asics Epirus was a shoe that did really well. And it was like, hey, I love that shoe. It does really well. Well, let's say the shoe is it's at the time one of the better products. It had probably more of a chance of being successful with a variety of customers. So I think that did drive it. I think now, and this is where, to kind of speak to Paul's point, that it started to change, and I would even credit when I met Paul at Marathon, which became Fleet Feet, that we started to look at fitting differently. And I think we started to look at the customer experience differently, that, we're going to bring up 3 shoes. And I think as the brands got better, bringing up 3 shoes became more of a horse race. If there were, I'd say the product was more even between the 3. And that experience for the customer, then, hey, this, Saucony fits my heel better. Asics fits my, I love those in my arch. That kind of opened the door up to, I think, us fitting better as well.
I think there was probably 2 where there was a big shift in terms of technology and new technology coming out. I worked at Runners High out in Menlo Park when I was in residency, and at that time, that was 1999, and Mizuno kind of rolled out their new shoe. All of a sudden, you had a lightweight shoe that had, kind of a stabilizer, a little bit more cushion that was different than that of like an AirPod, and that became the hot shoe. Like Hoka's now being, again, a technologically different shoe than the rest. So
yeah,
we definitely have biases when we were selling shoes back then, because it was like the new technology was kind of, overriding the old kind of, the Sauconys at that time, or the Nikes and Asics back then.
Yeah, and I think, Rob, you raised a good point, because any shoe store you go to, there's going to be people with biases, and not necessarily the bias isn't malicious, but sometimes it's just not informed. And one thing that I've learned to tell my patients is, when you go to the shoe store to try on shoes, whether they're going to Fleet Feet or somewhere else, I just tell them, don't let anyone tell you what shoe to get based on what you look like in it or what they think you need. You are your own expert on comfort. You need to make comparisons and pick what feels best to you. And I think part of this too, John, is, back in the day, there was no research to guide us. We didn't have studies on comfort. We didn't have studies on biomechanical effects of footwear, even really basic, what we would consider kind of rudimentary studies now. They really weren't openly available back then. So it was really a trial and error basis. And a lot of us, myself included, I would say there was a point where I was probably being too aggressive in the way I fit shoes and and doing some things that I thought were right. And then eventually the research humbled me, and I was like, I'm not the expert. The customer's always the expert. We just have to listen to them and kind of get some input to help guide them towards the shoe that they like. But yeah, the bias part definitely filters in, and even really well-meaning shoe fitters will kind of maybe say some things or do some things that aren't always in the best interest of the customer.
Yeah,
I think I'm working here now. Sorry, guys.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, sorry about that. We're technically back on. Along that same line of bias of the shoe fitter, we've run into bias of physicians that refer patients that, patient comes in your store saying, my doctor said to get a Brooks Beast. And unless they got a Brooks Beast, they weren't going to be happy. And that kind of handcuffs the running retailer. And, I know not everyone does that, but, when I send someone, I try to keep it open so that gives some flexibility on not saying you have to get a specific shoe, but it may be a certain feature. And I don't know what or how you deal with physicians that come in or others that say they need a specific shoe when that may not be the right shoe for that person.
Yeah, I think on the retail side, for many years, I don't know how New Balance 990s got into the heads of doctors, but that has to be the most prescribed shoe in the history of mankind from doctors. I don't know if
they like suede.
Yeah. Oh boy, man! All right, Rob's not going to like it.
No, I've never worn this shoe. It's under my desk. I just keep it under there. I got it.
Yeah, sure. Whatever,
that
Mr.
may
Rogers.
be the hidden story is how did New Balance 990 get in the mind of every doctor in America? So that used to be the shoe that we would it would be incredible how many people would get referred in for that shoe for every ailment, from sore, knee issues to ankle, anything. No, I think referrals, it is helpful. I think on our side of the fence, if it's more open-ended to a fit process where they can try on shoes in a certain category, that's kind of the best of both worlds, I think, for the customer and for us. Because, until they get the footwear on, you don't know how comfortable it's going to be, how well it's going to fit their foot. But now there's times when we've had one of Paul's partners sent someone in and they had a specific shoe they wanted that person to get. We got it for them. Then there's times when I think, and I do think the whole medical community is getting a lot more informed maybe than it was when they would only send for the 990. People are starting to understand the footwear. I think there's people in the medical profession that are actually using the shoes as well. So they're getting great experience in the product with friends, neighbors, the running groups they're in. So I think it is getting a lot better. We see less and less of that. I think probably one of our biggest concerns is when we get we'll get some medical referrals that are very specific to like a movement pattern that we don't totally understand. And it might be another, it's just something that we don't want to get into sometimes as far as like what they're telling us they need. And not to disparage anything, but a lot of times it's chiropractors will want things that I don't know if makes a lot of sense to us, like what they'll want with fitting. But we'll take that and we'll try to work with the customer and then let them exchange if they don't feel it's right.
Yeah, but I noticed that even today I had a patient. What I've been doing more lately is just to say what the issues I see. So patient has a wide forefoot, patient has a narrow heel, patient has a high instep. Please help me, and you guys are the professionals and you'll find the, 3 or 4 shoes that work best for them.
Yeah, and we do encourage people, if they're worried that their doctor is not going to like the shoe they pick, we're like, hey, take a couple, bring them in, have them look at them, or your physical therapist, a chiropractor, whoever it is, hey, take a look at this. If they think it's better, some of it's just confidence for that patient as well, or customers for us.
Yeah, and it definitely requires a certain amount of diplomacy. And even when I'm in the store, I run into that same situation too, where I'll explain to them that even if it was a specific shoe, I'll say, but I want you to compare it to some other things, because there is good research that shows if you select the most comfortable option, you're less likely to get injured and you'll perform better. And once you kind of explain it to them that way, and then also I kind of like to empower the customer that I'm not the expert on comfort for them. I know something about shoes, but they're their own expert. And so I just like to them to kind of trust their feelings And some people want to be told what shoe to get. They just do. They're happy that it's just one shoe that their doctor told them to get. But then when you come in and say it's a little more complex than that, but you are still going to be the expert. And so if you kind of educate them to trust themselves and to know that what they feel is good, that helps. And then, but tied to that, John, I also think the volumental, the scanning, the technology systems are a really good tool to help customers understand and trust the expertise of the staff and the store. Can you explain a little bit about what the volumental is and how you use it?
Sure. So volumental is a 3D scanner that uses HD cameras to do a rebuild of the foot. I think we're going into our 4th year with it. So it really allows us to take a scan of the foot, go over it with the customer, measures all the different metrics of the foot, arch height, length, girth of the foot. But by doing that, it's, versus the old Brannock scale where we would just have them stand there, we can actually see the depth of their foot width, where it's wider. It does help when you start talking to the customer about how the shoe should fit. It's probably been my biggest eye opener to see widths. We've always been able to do widths on the Brannock, but it was kind of iffy and how you were using it, how they were standing in it. But this way, we really can say to a customer, you're going to be more comfortable in a width either way, narrow or wide. It really has opened up the wide category. I think it allows some expertise for every fitter to be able to say, hey, this is what your foot looks like. These are the things. We are doing an engine in there where it's starting to show footwear that people with the same foot have bought, and it'll push it up in the engine what has been more successful. So kind of going back to the old theory of the better product may rise up for each foot, which I think is just interesting for us to see, because we've never really been able to quantify how they're fitting to what they're purchasing to based on their foot type. So we're starting to see some interesting things there. I think it just gives overall expertise. You really do see what the foot is. Like the fit station, that's something we're going to be adding in as well with Superfeet to see that movement.
Yeah, and what I've liked about that volumental scanner is that plenty of our patients that we see in clinic as podiatrists, right? Part of the reason they have foot pain is they have a really hard foot to fit, right? Either it's, odd shape or very wide. And there's clear data that shows poorly fitting shoes lead to foot pain and injury. And so when I have someone that's kind of tricky, I'll actually send them to Fleet Feet and say, they've got this scanner that will give you a 3D model of your foot. It'll help you understand the shape of your foot. And because it can also tie into this database of footwear, it can also show you what shoes might be a good starting point to trying them on. It's not going to tell you what's comfortable, but matching the shape of the foot to the shape of the shoe and the size is the best starting point for comfort. And then the other elements tie in. But I was, to be honest, a little skeptical of the volumental. I thought it looked a little too fancy, a little too techy. It's like, what's that really going to do? But I've become a big fan of it, especially for people that have foot pain and difficult to fit feet.
Yeah, I think it's like any change. When it first came in the store, we had to, everybody was kind of used to doing their own thing, like getting into patterns and change. And I think once we got used to it, now I can't imagine doing it without it. It's been such an add-on. And when it doesn't work, we go back to the Brannock, and that works just fine too. But you just get more in depth. I think you just get a better experience for the customer and for a fit too. That allow you to see a little bit more what that person's been wearing and or what will fit better in their foot. And all of a sudden you bring a wide out for somebody, and it's like the happy lights go on. And Paul, when we're fitting, one of the things that I always try to work with our staff, and I think our fitting process does, is I let people tell me what they're feeling. I don't tell them what they should feel. So I think when they put a shoe on, I always listen for cues that, and then I usually tell them their cues back. If, now the products have gotten so good. They really have that. You can have 3 shoes in a category and get a person in those 3 shoes, and they really are close. You could probably pick either of the 3 and be perfect in any of them, but I'll listen for cues they give me when they're trying them on. I'll say, what do you think of this one? And they'll say, oh, I really like this, this, and this. So then at the end, when they come up, I'll say, well, listening to the cues you've been giving me, you've said more positive things about the Brooks shoe versus the New Balance shoe. So, in the fit process, your telltale of comfort is leaning more this way. So I kind of use their information, not mine. We're just kind of refeeding it back.
Right. And And that's where I think you kind of teach your customers to trust themselves, and that to trust themselves as their own expert on comfort. That's kind of, I think, and the Volumental is such a great educational tool when they can see a 3D model of their foot and understand a little bit better how that matches up with the shape of the shoe. That's where I see that as a great educational tool as well.
And the biggest education is always people are like, I'm not an 11 and a half. I've always been a 10. Well, not anymore. Not according to this iPad. People,
That's right.
and people believe iPads. This is, the thing. The thing with anything, I could put anything on that iPad after the scan, and people would believe it because it's on an iPad versus me. So sometimes it gives us a little credibility to say this is what the scan says, and it can't be wrong because it's on an iPad.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Some people are really fiercely protective of what size they think they are, and it's hard to argue with a 3D model and an iPad.
And you probably see that in your practices. But I mean, our own staff were that way. I mean, again, we had some staff that were arguing that it was wrong, so we'd recalibrate it and put them back on, and sure enough, it was right.
We have patients who stockpile shoes, and they'll buy like 10 pairs of the ASICS 2100. And they have 10 pairs now in a size 7.5, and they're an 8. So then they have to go and chuck it all and get some new shoes. But yeah, it's crazy.
The midsoles are yellow and crackly, and I thought I went to a meeting once with ASICS, and I found in my garage when we were moving a pair of GT 2000 or GT 2050. So they were at least 10, 12, 13 years old. And I thought it'd be fun to show up at the first run and say, that's the shoes they suited me. I did. And I thought I was really a funny guy. I did 5 miles in that shoe, and my feet were killing me. You don't realize how much technology, one, has changed, and I think as we've moved through all these different phases, this is something we get to is, I mean, they used to put, you could have had roadblocks for the pronation devices they were sticking in these shoes. The post-medial side was like tank. So
massive.
Yeah. When you haven't been in that in a while, you notice it.
Hey, John, just on technology, want to get your take or opinion or your best practice on 5 years ago, no one knew what the drop of a shoe was, and now it's, the 0 drop, the traditional 10 to 12, the 8, hasn't really shaken out yet. Where do you see that going, or how do you deal with people that want a certain drop or don't want to drop?
It was really obviously the whole barefoot running that really took off. That was the thing that everybody wanted to discuss. I think it was a great evolution in footwear, maybe in the sense that it made everybody think about stuff that whether we should have been thinking about it or not, but it brought a lot of changes into the technology. Heel height drop, you get the customer that still talks about it. I think, what we're seeing is the heel heights are coming back up. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but they're starting to go back up. I mean, Brooks in general, which is the leader in run specialty right now as far as footwear in our world, they're bumping up a little bit. I think as long as it fits the customer well, I think that 8 millimeters seems to be about as low as we're seeing success in large numbers in shoes. And that's just my opinion, but looking at our wall, I think anywhere that, 8 to 12, depending on the person, I think is, and some of that is distribution weight. Once they're in the shoe, how high are they up? Body weight's going to affect that. I think a lot of it, I think the companies do a lot of their due diligence on that. A friend of mine that has done tons and tons of research for Nike in the past, he's pretty convinced about 10 millimeters is optimal when you get into heel to toe drop. And they've done tons of research on it. But again, that's their opinion on, I think it's an N of 1. What works for you is the best.
As a sports podiatrist, I'm sorry, Paul.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, as a sports podiatrist, I've been telling my patients more and more now to buy multiple shoes with different drops.
Same.
Just because you feel different for different days and different tempos and different terrains. I think it's better to have more than one.
There is. In fact, there was a study out of Belgium, I think 2 or 3 years ago, that showed running injuries were reduced in runners that had multiple pairs of shoes. And probably like you guys, I usually tell my patients, that have more than one pair of running shoes, and try to get them as different from each other as you find comfortable. And that doesn't mean you have to have a minimalist shoe and a Hoka, but you want to have, running's very repetitious. So you want more variability by having different structural features of that shoe. But there is research to back that up. And I tell all my runners now that, if you can afford 2 pairs of shoes, you should.
Yeah,
our Fleet Feet loves that.
Yeah, that's a good endorsement. Buy 5 shoes.
Yeah, 2 pairs, 3 pairs.
3, 6. I think I stole this from Paul, but Paul always said, it's like a toolbox. You don't have just one tool in the toolbox. You don't have one golf club. I mean, different things for different times. If somebody's doing speed work or they're going to do something different, I think it's awesome to get into a lighter weight shoe that's more flexible. If you're longer run, if you go in the Hoka, I mean, we're even seeing that with the elite athletes where they're probably using a variety of shoes at a higher level than they did in the past. So, depending on training. So it is nice if you can specialize. And we always encourage someone to try another brand because the inevitable, like the customer or your patient that bought 10 pairs of shoes of the same thing, they're going to change someday, so you might as well be used to something else. And I think inserts help with that as well. I know, and when you get into using an insert in your shoe, moving that comfort platform from shoe to shoe really does help you adjust to another shoe too.
Yeah.
One more thought on the technology on these hinges and the Hoka Fly and the Nike, and it seems to be that's kind of the hot trend, whether or not it's legitimate or if it's going to stay. Or do you have any thoughts on some of these technologies?
I think the new advancement with the carbon fiber plates in the shoes and how quickly we saw the advancement is going to stay. I mean, unless it's mitigated out by the governing bodies. I mean, it's been such a jump up in performance for people that I can't see that it will go away. The only way I think we would see it leave is if, the IAAF at the Olympic level or the Olympic Committee said they wouldn't allow them. I think it's here to stay. I think it's interesting performance. I think it's good for the sport. I mean, I think our sport sometimes lacks any pizzazz or talk about. And if we get in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times about a shoe that what it's doing, and at least it brings some attention to the sport, I think it's good. It obviously, I'm not competing anymore, and I would have loved to have seen what would have happened, but seeing younger people that are in our store and competing and how big a difference it makes, it's pretty big. I mean, we really haven't had anything like that, in our sport for a long time.
Would you consider that doping?
No. I mean, I think doping is it's a whole different level. I think once you get into something like that, is a titanium frame better than, are all the Tour de France guys going to go back to spindle wheel bikes on metal? I mean, we've got carbon fiber. I kind of look at it like the bike. The bike technology has improved so much that why can't footwear technology improve? And if the playing field's equal, I guess I would say that I would disagree that if the entire field didn't have access to a technology that is that advanced, that makes a difference in performance, that makes a difference. So I think if everybody has access to the Alpha Fly from Nike or the Hoka shoe, and they can all compete with it on or something similar to it, I think that's good for the sport. It's a better bike,
Yeah.
It does make a big difference too. It's incredible. It's kind of fun. I think it's fun to see.
Yeah, and John, are people coming in and asking for those things? Do they sell out quickly when you get them in stock?
They do sell out almost immediately. Yeah, they'll be gone. So and that's a certain segment of people that, your competitive athlete, but and I've seen different studies on it. If let's say you're trying to qualify for Boston and how competitive that's gotten, even in the age groups, you can be 5 minutes under the time and not make it. You get a shoe like that on and you get an extra, it benefits you. I think you're seeing age groupers go for them, shoe collectors. Yeah, I think that the single best day we've ever had in a shoe sell out was the original Nike Flies when the carbon shoe came, the racing shoe. It was just within an hour they were gone.
Yeah. Hey, can I switch gears for a second? One of the biggest issues that I have is dealing with the younger runner. It seems as though a lot of my 7th and 8th grade girls are now making it to varsity, and they're not skeletally mature yet, and their foot is still growing, and they might not have access to a really quality shoe because they might have a foot sometimes that's smaller than 6.
Sure.
So what do you do for patients like that?
You know, a lot of the companies now, the kids' footwear, like New Balance, they're using the same midsole material. I believe Brooks is. So you really can get a shoe that's comparable quality. Now, that wasn't always the case in the past, for sure. Or if you're picking them up off the shelf at, a discounter, they're probably not going to be the same quality. But if you look, like, I think, like, we're carrying New Balance, I know are the exact same midsole consistency and quality. And if you're a smaller footed person, you can buy the kid shoe for a lot less and essentially get a good shoe. Now, that wasn't always the case. But I would say now most of the companies, I know New Balance, Brooks, I believe Asics, they have their technology in the shoe. So with those younger athletes, I think that's important. That, whenever you get into the younger athletes, a lot of times parents are just buying them an off the shelf, or, it probably isn't the greatest quality, or they all want to wear Nike Frees because they look cool.
That's right.
Hey, John, let's, if you guys are okay, kind of talk a little bit, moving towards relationship with retail and medical. And I know we touched on some of the elements of it a little bit, but, all of us, when we've been down at the running event, it's a topic that comes up on a pretty regular basis. Retailers want better relationships with the medical community. The medical community probably needs to know their retailers better and build a trust and relationship. Do you have any insights or ideas on that kind of approach? And do you see some of the things that are coming together? Do you see retail and medical moving closer together, even with some of the customization that's on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to relationships and, making partnerships with people that want to be in the category and want to grow it. I mean, I look at the example of like what we've built, but we've also done it with other physicians as well. I think a lot of it comes down to trust, that this is somebody who you're sending them to who's, going to follow through on what you would like to see with your patient. And I think obviously you guys live in a world where you're governed by more rules and regulations on like as far as what you can do and can't do. I think a lot of it comes down to setting up the relationships. And I know across the country, a lot of the Fleet Feets I know and independent stores have all these unique relationships in different pockets. I think a lot of it's just communicating what can you do for the clinic, having trust that the staff's going to understand on both sides kind of what the relationship is. I know a lot of groups do outreach with medical nights, bring doctors in. I think we're pretty lucky here in a unique environment where we have people that are interested in the sport as well. And I think for podiatrists in general, I think reaching out to a local store, if you have interest in the sport, really is going to benefit both sides. I mean, I think, what do you think, Paul? I mean,
Yeah. And I think, part of the reason that I approached Marathon Sports when I was still in my residency, just to build a relationship, was I knew they had the best reputation in town. And I knew I wanted to work with athletes. And I also knew I wanted to help kind of build my image and visibility as I started my practice. And that was back in 1997. And I can't believe I'm still, working on that relationship and partnering with John at Fleet Feet. But it's been a fun and important part of my practice. And it's given me, I get patients from the store, but then I have a reliable, trustworthy source to send people to from my clinic. It's been a huge part of my practice. I can't imagine not having these relationships. So it kind of feels like a no-brainer, but I know that sometimes the retailers are intimidated, like, how do I approach the medical community, or how do I find the people in my community? And I know that's not an easy thing to do, but I definitely encourage all my medical colleagues, whether they're therapists or physicians or surgeons, to build that relationship, because it's a win-win. And patients very often get stuck in the middle. Well, in the medical clinic they said this, and in the retail setting they said that. But when we communicate and trust each other and build relationships, then our patients get better care and better fit in the retail setting.
Yeah, and I think from the run specialty side, I've certainly seen cases where, or stores or people that I've talked with that, you get Joe running guy that knows everything. And we've all had it. I've had it in my store where I've had to sit somebody down and say, hey, you do know a fair amount, but you're not the expert of all experts on this stuff. And I think sometimes for the medical communities, when they look at the stores, oh boy, these running guys are going to send them off to, they'll be in barefoot shoes because that's what that store is all about. But I think for us, I think we have to be cognizant of what the medical community needs. I think outreaching both ways, if you had a medical practice in your community to reach out like you did in Florida, or, you've got someone, hey, we're going to reach out. And the other way too, I know a lot of the stores around the country do medical nights where they'll bring people in, kind of show them what they do. Fleet Feet's done an awesome job of that, of setting these up, showing what the scanner is. This is the program. This is what we'll put them through. And then get feedback on both sides. What does this physical therapy group want, or what does their referral look like? So I think we, in general, you just got to reach out, and it's personal connections. I mean, you can't really make up an algorithm to do this. I think you just really have to get in and kind of meet the people, see who's interested in the sport too. I think is a lot of it. People that are, and I think podiatry, I think more and more we're seeing on that end, people that like running, they see the value in running and they really want to be a part of it. I think in the past, like early in my career, I probably wouldn't have sent anybody to hardly any podiatrist that was out there. But now we're seeing all these people that are really interested. You're getting the footwear. I think it really has been a cool thing to see happen.
I will tell you, I used to get my guard up a little bit though when I had a patient that would come in and said, oh, I already got my gait evaluated and I got custom orthotics from the shoe store. And I'm like, all right, so A, you didn't get custom orthotics, and B, who was doing that evaluation? Was it John Long, or was it, the guy who worked at Gap last week? So, that frustrates me a little bit too. So, but now I've kind of learned that, like you said, it's all about, like, if I do get that patient, then I'm going to communicate with that store and say, hey, tell me what you did, what you saw, and maybe we can help that patient.
Yeah. Oh, I think I've seen it over and over again, the stride expert, and people ask for that. Like, everybody wants something free. Like, I bet we get a call, if not daily. Are you the store that does a gait analysis with and to do that, as everyone knows, to do that really well takes an unbelievable amount of training. You can do basics. We only do a walking evaluation in the store now. We don't have them run. We're not filming it. You can make up, again, you can put it on an iPad. You can see certain things, but you're not going to be able to do a gait analysis. That's for sure. And on the other side, we'll see a physical therapist who's doing gait analysis that, I wouldn't totally trust what they're doing, but maybe that's just me because I know a little bit more about it. But I think it's on our side, we should be more cognizant of, what we're doing is fitting shoes. We're not doing a full gait analysis, but there are stores out there that do it.
No, but I think you're right about that. And as far as from the professional's point of view as well, we're not only doing it as well. And Paul put together a great talk one time about the dynamic assessment of the athlete. And that's something that not only can the professionals do, but you guys should learn how to do that as well. And, and pick up the little cues and say to us, hey, by the way, we noticed that this hip drops a little bit when they stand on one leg, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, that's been a frustration of mine too. Even in our market in Minneapolis, there's like a particular store that's known for their philosophies promoting mostly minimalist type of footwear. And then there's another retailer that has someone that does what they consider a pretty extensive gait analysis, but any of us in a clinical setting would be like, that's really not evidence-based in any way. Yet they have the fact that they do this gait analysis, they've built a reputation around it. So it's frustrating. That's what retailers have to compete with, is either be intellectually honest with your customers and say, no, we don't do gait analysis because there's no evidence to show that it helps you find the right shoe or prevent an injury, or put on a show so that they trust you more to fit them for their shoes. And so that's one reason I've liked partnering with John, because he's always been intellectually honest about what we know and don't know in the retail setting, and we let the customers be the expert there.
No, Paul, you forgot to mention in that analysis they do, they lay on the floor and you step over them.
I was going to mention that, but yeah.
Which I really don't know if I want to go down that road, but.
Yeah, John's not kidding. This person that does gait analysis lays on the floor and lets the person run over them to analyze their gait. And people actually believe that's valuable.
I might not be able to come home if I was doing that at work.
That could open up the door to all kinds
dimension.
of yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. It's that ridiculous, but it's
Wow.
True.
That's marketing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
marketing.
It works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, well, maybe we can use that to segue towards some of the technology that is a little more evidence-based, but will also be coming in. So, John, we already know you've got the scanner, and then now some stores are introducing that the fit station that Michael brought up earlier that has a pressure mat to combine with a scan for the foot. So what do you see coming, John, as far as the pressure mats, and is that leading us to this personalization and customization of footwear?
I do. Yeah, I think that, it's just going to give us more data. I mean, you're going to be able to see the foot a little more in movement, I think, versus like the naked eye watching someone walk and seeing where the pressure points are. I haven't worked specifically on the system, so I don't want to talk too much about, how I think it's working fairly well. I think, it's like any technology. I think the idea of, seamlessly bringing it into creating footwear is taking a little longer, I think, than the industry probably thought. But they're working with a lot of different platforms. I think it's coming. I mean, I think you're going to see customization. I think as the technologies get better and better, it's going to become more evident. Now, will that be a specific shoe that they build for you, or will it be a better dynamic of looking at what footwear we're going to put you in based on this movement pattern? I think we'll probably see initially that end of it, and then customization. It's out there when that will happen. I would guess it's going to be another 5 years. I don't know. I mean, it's there, but it's going to be very expensive as well. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, and the estimates I've heard for customization is 5 to 10 years. We're probably 5 to 10 years out from customized footwear. But yeah, part of it is combining that pressure mat data. And I actually do have a fit station in my clinic, so I'm using the medical grade version of it. And it's definitely been interesting learning and seeing how my patients move based on their pathology. It doesn't always, translate into, oh, they have this pressure spot, that means I should put them into this shoe, right? We all know that. Yeah. But we certainly also know that footwear affects movement patterns. And so assessing their gait barefoot and then in footwear, you can see some changes. I don't have an in-shoe system, but I know that as it leads to customization, that the manufacturers are looking at it as, we need an accurate model of the foot. Right now, we have to use these expensive scanners to do it. Ultimately, though, they're all working to be able to scan the feet with the phone. And I've read that the new iPad that came out and the newest iPhone that has multiple camera lenses, those are getting very closer. Even LiDAR that's being used in autonomous cars, those kind of features built into the phones are what's going to really open the door to customization. And of course, people have that in their pocket. So right now, you could look at kind of the retail setting as moving us into that direction. But all the manufacturers agree that body scanning and gathering data, not just on the feet, but even custom clothing, is going to be in our pocket with our phones somewhere down the line.
And that's kind of what we're hearing from Volumetal. They have full scans that they're doing, and it's going to see more and more of that. The customization of footwear, I think there's two paths that the industry is going to go. I think the probably more technologically challenging is going to be to do customized with scans. I think we're going to see probably modular footwear that's put together in pieces is also going to be an option. I think that, I don't know how far out that is, but that makes manufacturing a lot easier. Customization will be independent, kind of based on what they have available. So that'll be pieces of a shoe put together. And I think customization on that will be pretty interesting as well. Some of the companies are starting with it. We'll see where it is. It's kind of similar to some of the Nike technology where you can design your own shoe and then they ship it to you, but there'll be pieces you'll put together in footwear. So I think that's coming. I know that, there's definitely stuff happening with that. It'll just depend on when we see that. And I think it'll probably be a split between the two, how that works.
Yeah, and I think you're right, John, because the thing that's easy to customize now is the footbed, right? So you could take an off-the-shelf shoe and customize the footbed. And then Brooks I remember in 2017 at the running event when they supposedly made a custom shoe on the floor, and we found out later maybe they didn't, but they are saying they can tune that midsole. So if they looked at your pressure mat analysis and saw that after heel lift, your center of mass shifted medially, then they would say, okay, well, we can contour the footbed, but we're also going to create a dual density midsole that makes it a little more dense on that medial side, just as your heel lifts, so that you don't have this sudden shift of the center of mass. So that's what Brooke was talking about 3 years ago. But as we've all learned, they still haven't come to market with anything along those lines. But contouring the footbed and then tuning the midsole will be probably where it starts. But the upper then is going to be a lot more tricky to customize, at least now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as far as a shoe in pieces, you're going to see shoes that you're going to probably have a variety of midsoles to choose from. You're going to have a variety of upper sizes to choose from, and how those all come together is going to be a unique process, but a pretty simple one. So I think we're going to see almost like inserts. So you're going to have these different ones for different foot types, and then you'll be able to modularly put them together. So I think that manufacturing, and that may be able to be done in-house. So I think you're going to see some changes, as glues go away, you're going to see different ways things are adhered together. Is starting to really happen in other parts of the world in manufacturing that we'll see fall into footwear. And that could be, a lot of it's not even existent, it's proprietary probably still, but it's coming.
Right. Yeah. And it'll be, and even the volumental guys say this because they've done 6 million scans now. So they're mining their data and they're doing machine learning to look at patterns. And the same thing will happen with, how do you tune a midsole for someone that moves this way? And you might have, with machine learning, it'll say, well, 80% of people with this movement pattern found this density of the midsole most comfortable. So those will be the things you'll kind of be playing odds. We'll still won't be able to say, oh, guaranteed this shoe with this feature custom made will feel great for you. But we could say, 70 to 80% chance that this will work well or feel good for you, and then make the shoe.
Yeah. And
I can't imagine what the returns are going to be like if it doesn't work. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you have something that's custom, like for us orthotics, if they're custom, we have some policies that are in place. If somebody wants to return, maybe we return the amount that the orthotic costs from the lab. But as far as our fitting fees, it's all wrapped into it. So it could be something of a like, well, that was custom for me, and that's it's not working. What's the next step, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think that scares retailers for sure, and manufacturers, of course. But the retailers are the customer-facing ones. They're the ones that got to deal with
exactly.
The floor.
Exactly.
Yeah. Any questions related to or topics you guys want to touch on with John before we wrap things up?
I don't know if you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt. Okay.
I don't know. I'm sorry, I missed the start, but I don't know if you touched on the kind of the disconnect between physicians and retailers, and I think you may know where this is going with trying to develop a best practice, how the retailer works with a physician, because as you mentioned, there's a kind of an intimidation factor from the retailer for the reaching out to the doctor. But I think on the other side, the doctor sometimes feel like they don't really know, and most of them probably don't because they don't keep up like the retailers, but trying to get everyone on the same page. And I know the reason the four of us kind of have been together recently is because our thought process on coming up with some kind of certification process to educate both ends, the physician and the retailer, and coming up with some kind of standardization on training running retailers on not becoming medical experts, but realizing if someone has a certain issue or foot type, when do they refer out or how do they refer, and at least giving them a basis for recommending what or how to go about things. And also, when I have a patient in the office and send them to the retailer, I never really hear back from them. So kind of improving the communication, setting up a program where I can send someone to the retail store, and then they can have a form filled out and said, yes, Mrs. Jones came in, send an email back, and then that gets input into the medical chart. And then next time we see the patient, we know what happened with them. So
yeah,
if you have any comments or suggestions or ideas on that.
I think you guys setting, I know a couple of years ago you guys did the Fit Master program, and that was hugely successful. I mean, I know that thing filled instantly. I think setting up a protocol where both sides could meet, like you're thinking about doing, would be great. I think anytime the medical community could set a plan or set a program up that you could plug and play with retailers, I think that would be really good, because I think it would create a platform of trust for one, and then maybe it's even a form of communication. I just wrote that down because I think that's a really interesting thing, that, you know, if you set up a website and you did a master's fitters program, or, you know, even next level for us, like where you'd have key people in our businesses that would be your outreach. I think bringing the two groups together that way on a platform would be, I think it'd be awesome. I mean, you know, for all of us to say, you know, this is a referral group. We've met on both sides. You know, these are people that have gone through the fitting process. You know, all of us have our own fitting process, and Fleet Feet uses one that we're really happy with. And I know the consistency across the country is really good for the most part, where I know, hey, if I send somebody to this store, they're going to go through this process and get the volumetric and get the scan. But I think having a medical outreach, if you had that program, I think it would be great. I think, you know, having something where, you know, even if you guys had and I talk like a website where we would say, hey, this is a group we're working with, this is how we meet. And then being able to set up both sides, where you could go to the podiatrist and say, hey, this is something we're setting up to really partner with these guys in a way where we can communicate back and forth, would be great. I mean, that to me, I mean, I think would be really nice from a retailer perspective to say, hey, these are people on the platform. You know, we have 4 staff that have gone through their program. You know, we really like it. And I think if it's informative and you're able to add in on our side, and we'll be able to, you know, in the same token, we can come back and say, this is what's happening on our side of the world, would be helpful, I think, for both groups. Because we're both really want to do the same thing. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're all pretty committed. We're very committed to keeping people active and healthy. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, I think just kind of putting that disconnect together, and your store was trained and they did the half day, full day certificate, says we went through this certification, and at least that, you know, not only sets you apart from someone down the street, but it'd say at least you have some interest in you know, communicating with the physician, and it kind of goes both ways. At the end of the day, the patient or athletes can be better off.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with, you know, one of the with COVID and everybody being on Zoom, whether you did even a virtual program where you could go and say, we're doing a program in Minneapolis, these are the people that are interested in doing it, you know, introduce some different podiatrists on there, have them talk about a different topic. I think any way you could bring the two together would be awesome.
Hey, John, I had a question. As far as newer technologies that you're hearing talked about a lot, as well as different classifications of shoes, like I think you heard Simon Bartel talking a lot about vibration in shoes. And then the other category that we see a lot more, something I'm obviously involved with, is recovery. Do you find that people are coming in and looking for things like that in those categories?
Not specifically. You know, I think the whole vibration thing, I mean, that's been around a while, just knowing that the vibration moves up, and we haven't had anybody in with a tuning stick yet. So not specifically to that. I think right now I think with COVID, you know, there's always a brand or a shoe that I call the Walk on Water brand. That can cure every injury. You can run longer. You can do more in it. Everything is great. And Hoka has that right now. I mean, it was minimal shoes for a while. You know, my neighbor has Hoka. He can walk 20 miles in COVID and his feet don't hurt. It just, you know, and there's always that brand or that thing. We haven't really seen it. Now, maybe that's something that'll start rising up. You know, I think with probably the carbon fiber is what we hear about the most right now, people asking about that. And really even people asking, when is it going to be in the regular training shoes? So probably seeing a little more of that but you know, Simon always tends to be kind of on the edge of what's coming. So we could see.
Yeah.
Simon also helped design the Asics Koji, which I don't know if you've ever saw that shoe, but they could use that as a roadblock.
The coach.
Just look that shoe up. That's the Godzilla in his world.
That was Godzilla, for sure.
Michael, you got any questions or any other?
No, it's been awesome to get on this call with you guys, and you know, John brings, you know, a lot of obviously knowledge and wealth of knowledge. And I think, you're right. We got to connect the dots between medical and retail, and be able to kind of have that, circle back and just say, hey, listen, we have people who are interested in running retail, both on the medical side and obviously on the retail side, and connecting that, I think, is one of our main goals in this whole venture. So.
Hey, John, I had one more question on
Sure.
how you're coping and what other things you're doing now that you wouldn't have done 2 months ago. Our local fitness running stores put on a virtual marathon. These virtual races are becoming pretty popular, and I don't know if that's something you think is going to stick, or are you guys doing anything different than you may not have done?
Retail-wise, we're doing appointments. We did do some virtual appointments. So we were scheduling appointments with people on the phone when we could only do curbside, and that, I think that's something that'll stay with us. They've come way down for what we're doing, and that's, in a retail engagement. I think the virtual races have become I think right now they're going to be very popular. It'll be interesting to me if we're tied down a lot longer, how popular they'll stay. But I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, people are doing some really cool stuff with the virtual, like the run across New York. I think that, brilliant, each day your mileage goes in to run across the state. I think people are getting innovative. I think people are running and they're still training. One of the things I thought we would see go down in the store because we weren't open to the public is nutrition. People are still wanting nutrition. So people are still getting out, doing long runs. I think we're seeing a lot of individual things too, where people are coming in and saying, oh, some of my college teammates they're doing a 30-mile run. They pick a distance, they're going to do it. This is the day they're doing it. So they're training for that. So I think you're seeing some more interpersonal things go on. I know the numbers were really, really high. They're starting to come back to kind of normal running numbers now. I think as people get back into the workforce, and I think you guys should be busy. There are a lot of people out there that were in not great footwear too. We've done a lot of hand holding, talking to people about what they need. But I think the virtual will stay to some degree, but I think people will be itching to get back out there. I think it's going to be a while, but we'll see. I guess it's just have to kind of wait and see.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we can probably wrap it up from there. So, John, I knew you'd be a great guest. You got such good insights from all aspects of running and the retail side and everything, and you're always entertaining to listen to. So we appreciate taking the time to be with us today.
This is great, you guys. It's great having your group, and we'll get this thing going.
Yeah, good. And we'll definitely be using you as a resource too, as we kind of move towards doing some other things beyond just the podcast in this area too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Let me know. We'll get can get groups together all over the place for you. So that'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
All right.
All
Thanks,
right, everybody,
John.
stay healthy.
Great. Thanks, John.
Great.
Thanks, John.
All right. Bye.